Welcome to this week's installment of Reading with Robin, your number one destination since 2002 for insightful author interviews and discussions on everything literary. And with no further introduction, your host, Robin Call.
One of the things that I most love about hosting Reading with Robin for all these years is the pleasure of a return guest, of a guest whose book so spoke to me that when a new one came, I was like, oh my God, there's a new book out. And this is the case with Natalie Eve Garrett. We were just talking off air, I can't believe it's been 3 years ago, about her gorgeous book, The Artist and Writer's Cookbook, a collection of stories with recipes. And I remember, I'm pretty sure when you posted it on Facebook, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a gorgeous book, favorite writers, artists, and it's cookbook, and the stories, and it's always the stories. And then when I saw this new one was out called Eat Joy, Stories and Comfort Food from 31 Celebrated Writers, it's just out. It is beautiful. Visit NatalieEveGarrett.com, and you can also find her on Facebook and on Instagram. Welcome back to Reading with Robin. Natalie.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. And so I was gushing off air and thought, well, why should we just keep it to ourselves? That's silly. That doesn't make for a podcast. So I'm thrilled to have you on. And, yeah, when I read, firstly, I love anthologies with so many beloved writers. Then you add food and stories and this amazing artwork in. So it is just like the perfect book. And also, it's a great, and I said this last time too, because these are the books that you give for gifts, and it's always the gift-giving season in my house, but for just for the calendar's sake, it is the gift-giving season joining us. And to me, this book, when it's, I love giving cookbooks to and so many friends and family members love cookbooks, but I love pairing with maybe ingredients from a recipe. And with this book, you could also pair it with one of the author's books. I mean, you've got so many of our favorites here. You've got Mira Jacob, Alexander Chee, Claire Moussad, Anthony Doerr, Lev Grossman, Colin McCann, who is just one of my favorites ever. The list goes on, and it happens to be an inordinate amount of authors that I've interviewed or hosted through the years, so maybe I feel even more connected.
Plus,
you are beautiful. Yeah. I know, right? We have fabulous taste, you and I, Natalie.
Yes.
So congratulations on another stunning winner. It is just magnificent, and you're welcome. It even feels good. I mean, Catapult did such a beautiful job with this book.
Yeah, they did. I love it. I love holding it. It has such a nice texture to it, really. I had no idea it would be this way.
I'm petting it right now.
Yeah, no, it is. It's soft, and it kind of shimmers in the light because it has this reflective quality to the imagery on the cover. It's just, we appreciate all of that goes into making a book so beautiful like this. And I also love its size. So talk about when you got the idea for this book, and really there's so much work that goes into, I mean, the authors are writing their pieces, yes, the way you've organized this book and what you wanted the reader to feel, smell, taste. I mean, all the senses are engaged in these stories. So talk about your concept for this and how you pulled it off so gorgeously. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Like you said, it all began a few years ago. That's when my last book came out in 2016, and I didn't expect to embark so soon after that on another book, but you don't always control, your own and how things work out. And I had this idea. I was actually a few years ago in the midst of a dark time in my own life, not long after my last book came out. And to be honest, it felt like kind of a dark time in general already in the world around that time.
As we discussed, it sure did.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
No coincidence.
And so there was that, and then layered on top of that, I received a diagnosis that really shook me, and I wasn't ready to deal with it, as so often we are not when things come our way that we don't anticipate. And
I'm sorry, I had no idea. So I'm.
Oh no, I mean, it's fine. It's still something that's there and will always be there, but it's not a source of
Good. I'm glad.
It's a challenge, but it's not a source of anguish anymore or a source of despair. And instead, actually, I've found a sort of a path to joy through it all.
That's wonderful. Well,
and I'm glad that I did, and I actually, in some ways, I sometimes, beat myself up for my initial reaction, but that's kind of the meandering way. We have to get where we're going. So, but for a few days after getting that diagnosis, I just sort of was wallowing in despair, and I had this image of just the most cathartic dream dinner party. And it's in part because the Artist and Writer's Cookbook had just come out, and it was so fresh in my mind, and my mind kept wandering back to certain stories in that book and certain ones that really, filled me with hope and with joy. And I had this vision for this dinner party where everyone was kind of sitting in this dim light and telling stories and laughing and crying and eating comfort food and sharing memories of their hard times and how, over and over again, they just somehow managed to make it through. And my dream dinner party ultimately became Eat Joy.
Did you have a dinner party with these authors and all these foods?
In my dream, I did. But
what an event that would be, Natalie.
I feel like it's the obvious and natural culmination for this book, and I really wish I could will it into being because I feel like it's meant to be.
Oh, I love it.
And I've actually talked about it with several contributors, how we want this to happen. But
let me in on the planning. That's what I do best.
That would be, this is exactly what I want to happen, I feel like. It's supposed to. But the book itself, I feel like, kind of is. It's also
sitting down at the table. Yeah, you're sitting down at the table with these authors, and they're such deeply personal essays. And it's interesting. So you've grouped it into 4 categories. So growing pains, loss, healing, and homecoming. And you can't help but when reading these stories think of your own, which is what a writer wants a reader to do, and put themselves into the story and imagine what their table would look like, and foods that spoke at a particularly difficult, trying, or growing sort of time. So I love the way you've broken this down, and I always want to know how you set out and how you put forth the word for the essays. Did you give them the category, or did they come back to you and it was obvious how to separate them? Like, how did the mechanics of that work?
I did not give them I don't think I even told them about the table of contents. I think I mentioned it to some contributors later on, and I said, your piece is just such a perfect fit for the homecoming chapter. But no, I didn't. Although when I started the book, I actually had chapters in mind, and I'm not sure how or why. I kind of knew, but Growing Pains, I ended up changing the name for that. But I think I had just the word journey, and it was just sort of an idea in my mind.
Yeah.
Journey, so it was journey, loss, healing, and homecoming. And then I think there was a 5th, which now I don't even remember.
Well, that's the beauty of it. You can switch it up, and we see, as the reader, we see the product. Yes.
Right. It sort of evolved into something else. But I did have this rough idea in mind, and it just always felt right to set it up this way. But no, when I pitched the idea to contributors, I talked about the idea of it was, and initially the subtitle for the book was Stories and Recipes for Dark Times. And I think sometimes I even put that in the subject line when I was writing people because
everybody responds to dark times, Natalie. Everybody, that's like, oh, dark times, yes.
Right, and I think some people who are contributors are really food people. That their recipes all over. They have gorgeous pictures of food on Instagram, and they have their novels are enlivened by food imagery and the sound crackling in the pan. And then there are other contributors who really and have been very forthright with me about how just food is not their thing, but they wanted to share something anyhow, and I love that too. I love that because we all have these stories.
Yeah.
And so I think and I think it's a real treat to actually also to hear from people who don't typically write about
who you
food,
wouldn't associate
or who
with
also
food.
don't. Right, or who also just don't talk about their personal life very much. They're not a memoir writer. They don't do a lot of essay writing, they do their novels. And so, like, I was so excited to hear Claire Massoud's story because it seemed like it was so nice to hear something so personal. And
so revealing. Yeah, and I remember in the first book, I forget who contributed, was it like grilled cheese or peanut butter and jelly or something really basic, but you know.
That was James Franco. James Franco.
Oh, James Franco. How could I forget who that was? James. Right. Okay. It's be like that stuck with me. Like, and because somebody wants to contribute, food is the most universal of all things. So there's always some way to contribute. And I'm speaking with Natalie Eve Garrett. Her most gorgeous cookbook is out today. It's Eat Joy, Stories and Comfort Food from 31 Celebrated Writers. Find her on evegarrett.com for more information about the book. Also, you're on Instagram, and people, this is just a reader's and food. I mean, this book is for everybody. So if you're a reader and you love reading essays, and everybody can connect to different parts about these stories, and that's the thing I love about a collection of stories. You can pick something up depending on what you're in the mood for. You can read a few of them, and you feel like you've done some reading. So it's like an accomplished feeling, and it will. I dare anybody to read this book and not be thinking of their own journeys and where food's tied in, and when it was celebrated, when you can't eat, when you have to eat, and all of the things that food is so fraught, and I feel like it's been coming up in conversation in many different ways very recently in either books or conversations. It's just always something people want to talk about. So you get all these beautiful essays. Now, as the editor, I always wonder, when you're editing authors, is that just a little bit more of a joyous process because they're already writers to start with, or do you think to yourself, this is an author?
I mean, I think it's always, for me, it's joyful and it's work, so it's sort of both. But I mean, I love doing it. It wasn't most pieces, they evolve. So there'd be the first draft, and it'd be sort of just a gradual evolution and to get to arrive at the final book.
At what we have in our hands
in that, and helping to sort of shape them and to help shape these stories that are so personal. It just felt like really such a gift for me personally, and such an honor to be able to work with these authors who I admire so deeply.
I mean,
I feel like they're trusting me with their stories.
Yes, and that's
really personal memories, the level of trust. Because some of them went through kind of dramatic evolutions.
The editor and the author and the editor relationship is so deeply personal. And as you mentioned, trust and the way somebody's story will, because that lives on, and how it's presented. So it's no small accomplishment to put a book like this together. It's really quite extraordinary. And because so many of these authors are favorites of mine, and I know many of them, it's this would speak to anybody, but it's especially affecting to me, and it's just, the whole package is just amazing. So let's dig into some of these stories. I picked one out of each category, maybe just to talk about. To begin with, Laura Vanderberg's Laura Vanderberg story, and she's in the first section, and also your introduction is beautiful as well. But she's in the growing pains.
Did you want to read any from it, or do you want me to?
Oh, do you want to read a little bit? Sure, you could do that. I mean, this book is so soothing, and it is like you're sort of wrapped in these different stories along with the senses of the food. So if you want to read a little bit, sure.
Or do you want me to
read?
Maybe
you go for it.
If you'd like to, I'm happy either way.
Yeah, it's your book. You go for it.
Okay. And I get to actually hear her read it, so I feel like that'll be...
Laura's story is Comfort with Eggs.
So I'll just read the very beginning, and then I'll stop there.
Sure.
My relationship to cooking is complicated. As a teenager and young adult, I was severely anorexic. I saw myself as disgusting and unworthy of sustenance. At my lowest points, I believed sincerely that I should die. Eating one grape more than I had allotted myself could keep me up through the night, wired on pills and pacing, trying to melt away the extra calories. Although my relationship to food has been healthy for over a decade now, going to dinner with my culinarily gifted husband is among my most treasured pastimes. I prefer not to linger too long. The ghost of the person who believed it was right and reasonable to starve herself to death will never fully leave me.
There it is, the ghost. Yeah. It's always kind of there, and she writes so hauntingly about that.
She does.
And so many people will identify with this. It's just, it's the topic that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Yeah, she's the only one who covered that terrain, and I did actually, I guess I mentioned in my invitation various topics that I would love to hear about. And, I talked about healing stories, but also, stories of more troubled relationships with food, because so many people, I want to say so many real women, because really as a woman, it's almost inescapable at some point in your life to have some kind of fraught relationship with food, maybe as a teenager, maybe, at some other point. The aftermath of pregnancy, I definitely remember, and I'm sure I'll never forget, but after in my early postpartum days, being at a CVS to get a flu shot, and someone said to me, "Oh, when are you due?"
The thing you never ever say to somebody, did you smack them with a flu shot? I would have grabbed that flu shot out of the doctor's hand so quickly. Well, not
and there
really
was another woman there, and I saw her eyes widen, thinking,
right?
Oh, she felt pain on my behalf. I could see it in her face.
You had that exchange with a stranger. So how do you respond to that? Because besides taking the flu shot and giving her an extra dose,
I don't know. I don't know that I respond. I was so tired and in pain and everything, so I don't know that I really did. But of course, it stayed with me.
Somebody could literally be delivering right in front of me, and I would not ask if they were pregnant.
Right.
That's my example. I would just never. True. Whoever thinks of ever doing that, never. You don't know. No. You just, and it's not your business. I'm taking a PSA second from Eat Joy.
Yes. That is wise, and I'm sure very helpful to many women.
I've told people of that, and I like Robin, you're so sensitive. I'm like, you know what? Not on this. Yes, I am, but on that one, no. So and
we all are, maybe.
Yeah. People that, except for that person who had to go and say that to you.
Yes. Really. Although, I don't know, maybe she is too. She just didn't. She was being thoughtless.
But I digress. So wait, how did we get to CVS? I was trying to remember how. Oh, you're talking about postpartum, right?
Yeah, and just sort of our fraught relationships with food and with image, and I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to, because for so many people, food is a source of joy, but the reverse can also be a source of joy and
absolutely. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. In fact, this book, to me, I was thinking how lucky there are people that associate food and joy. That's such a foreign concept to me. Although there are specific, because in reading some of these stories and people and writers connecting specific moments in time to a memory of a food. I know Alyssa Nutting, I think, talked about, was there a cantaloupe with blueberries in there? I think there was.
Oh, and that was in my intro.
I'm sorry, that was yours. Oh, okay. I was conflating yours and Alyssa's. Yeah, and I
love hers too. But,
yes, that was yours. I loved that with the cantaloupe, because I do that, and to me that's.
Oh, you do that too.
I do, and it's a happy memory. Yeah, or cantaloupe with cottage cheese.
I wonder, where does that come from? I don't know anyone else who does that.
I scoop out and I put fruit back in the middle, but sometimes I do do blueberries because it's the visual. It almost looks like it's that darkness inside that gorgeous orange. So, because anything connected to fruit in my mind is fine because it's fruit, So, I have very happy fruit memories and thoughts about fruit.
Yeah.
It's all, it's all a very happy thing. But Colin McCann's loss, before I digress into my whole food journey, Colin McCann's story about loss and the chocolate cake. So was he one that isn't really a foodie, but he wanted to connect a food
yes.
thought? Okay. I love the way he did. Well, first of all, he's one of my favorite authors/people, and I loved his story. Talk a little bit about that one.
Would you like, shall I read a paragraph? Or?
Sure, you could. Okay, you know it's funny. We don't usually read on the show, but I like that you asked. Oh. We do sometimes, and I like that you asked. And these are all beautiful. So absolutely, Colin's is called Dessert.
The sky would always be this shade of blue. The towers had come down the day before. 3rd Avenue on the Upper East Side was a flutter of missing faces. The posters taped to the mailboxes, plastered on windows, flapping against the light poles. Looking for Derek Sword. Have you seen this person? Matt Hurd worked for Morgan Stanley. The streets were quieter than usual. The ash fell, as ash will. Everything felt honed down to the necessary, except for one woman who sat alone at an outdoor table in a restaurant on 74th Street. She had just ordered a piece of chocolate cake. It arrived in front of her, and the waiter spun away. A slice of 2-layer cake, dark chocolate, a nipple of cream dolloped on top, a sprinkling of dark powder. The woman was elegant, 50-ish, beautiful. She touched the edge of the plate and brought it toward her. And I'll pause there.
And, just the memory of that blue sky on September 11th, and that column is talking about a story that's almost 20 years old. Like to remember that, like somebody was eating cake. Right. And he talks about whether, it was like a heroic move or like just a selfish one. I don't remember exactly how he puts it, but just to juxtapose those connections, those two different feelings to this woman sitting, and she doesn't even know. There she is in a story. That's the other thing about writers and their stories, that I think it's just so amazing of what is inspiring or which memories get caught and used in some way. That's the beauty of writing.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
gets me
reading.
Every time. Oh, no, thank you.
Right? And it makes me want a piece of chocolate cake and cry at the same time.
I think I want one at all times. But
right. Who doesn't want a piece of chocolate cake?
He had a lot of ambivalence. He had a deep ambivalence about sharing a recipe, though. And we went back and forth about that because he didn't want it to seem as though he was saying that he was, taking a stance on what this image of her sitting and eating, whether, he still felt a deep ambivalence about whether what she had, seeing her in this moment, this unbelievably horrible moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that was, if eating cake was, well, he didn't put it in the same word, but basically, like you said, sort of this
hopeful or act, out of
right, or if it was something more, and if it was her way of, dealing with her grief in the moment.
Yeah, and we'll never know. It's how he's left it, and we're chatting about this brand new and beautiful cookbook. Well, there are recipes. Book, Eat Joy, Stories and Comfort Food from 31 celebrated authors. Natalie Eve Garrett is the editor, and visit her site at natalieevegarrett.com. And she'll also talk about these beautiful illustrations. Meryl Brown is the illustrator, and they are just one after the other. So beautiful.
They are. I agree.
Just enhance these stories. I love the way they're just like playful and bright, where they need to be, and simple and so powerful. It's really, they're just really gorgeous. So, and then this chocolate cake recipe, is that just like that's not his, or he just picked one?
It's something that his wife might make it, but it's just very simple.
It's very generic. Yeah, your favorite chocolate frosting. I love that ingredient. That was one of my favorites. And I mentioned Alyssa Nutting earlier. Her story is called One Sip at a Time, and she is one of my favorite writers. So she talks about her husband when he moving out and just not being able to eat, and I think that's not an unfamiliar thing, about when there's such a stress, people do not eat. And so, like, what can you
very
eat?
much relate to that.
Right? Yeah. And you have to, at some level, you have to eat. I mean, we don't have to eat, but you do. At some point you do. It does sort of take over. But I can think about, like, when I absolutely cannot eat, I can eat applesauce. If I can't eat, I can eat applesauce. And usually watermelon. And, like, those are two of the only things I can think of when I really can't eat. And they're probably not that sustaining. Actually,
I've taken to smoothies. I've been having, like, in the last 3 years, I've had so many smoothies.
That's a smart thing, right, because it's
just been helping me through. I need, like, liquid, so I really could relate to this piece, just, like, one sip at a time.
It was very powerful. Yeah. Do you want to speak to it, as opposed to reading? I don't know, unless you'd like to read.
No, she talks about her anxiety and grief and stress in the aftermath of her divorce, and trying to sort of grapple with all these feelings and also manage to take care of herself and take care of her daughter. And she ends up finding, a friend recommends that she has green juice, that she drink green juice, and it ends up becoming, this sort of source of energy and helps sort of sustain her in this hard time. But also it can be kind of like an escape. Like, she talks about being at parties and people ask her hard questions, and she can just escape to her juice and just take a sip, one sip at a time.
It's an act. It's a very deliberate act, and it gives you just sometimes you need that. If you don't want to make that deep breath declaration, the sip sort of does that same thing. And people can ask just all sorts of. It's amazing what people will ask, isn't it? It's really right. It continues to just boggle my mind sometimes. And I think though the juice, the smoothie, and really getting things in, just the nutrition. I think that's a really great strategy when you can't eat. And the story that she shared with it, just one of the reasons I love her writing.
I love her line. Oh no, sorry. I love her line where she says she started to feel like a plant. She said, in moments of panic, it was actually a little fun to pretend this. You're growing, I told myself. You got chopped down, but you're growing back. I love.
Yeah, I love that. Just like one little green piece of energy on top of the next one. And that's really, it speaks to so much of our shared experience, and, sort of never knowing how things are going to pan out, but taking the smaller moments and building on that hope. And the green. I love that. And Homecoming, you have just also so many of my favorite writers in here. It really is quite a compilation. It's for people and listeners to the Reading with Robin show will know these are, those are readers, and they just so celebrate the authors. And so this book is such a treat. It's a real treasure. You have Mira Jacob and Alexandra Chi, two of my other favorites, back-to-back here, Porchista Kapoor, and Mele Malloy. What was her last book that I loved? Talk about depression pancakes. Just even pancakes are the happiest food on earth. So
they are. I'm going to make myself pancakes right when as soon as we're done talking. I've been looking forward to it.
Is that what were you really making those, or you just thought of it?
I know. I have the ingredients on the counter. I'm planning.
Pancakes they are
way
just
more than pancakes.
There's just nothing. That is another food, actually. If I really don't feel like having anything, pancakes just. And we would have pancakes for dinner, and I would as kids we did that, and as I would do that for my children. There's just something. It was also one of the foods I first learned how to make by myself, or I was allowed I think that was probably the first thing I was allowed to use the stove for. I might have been way older than many other kids that used the stove, but I remember making them at my friend Marie's house. Oh my God, such a memory. And I said, no, I know how to do this. I'm allowed at home. And we were in high school, so I know that's old. But, growing up in a neurotic Jewish household, that was pretty par for the course. And
My kids haven't really cooked it, so yeah. Neurotic Jewish households.
Right? That's right. It's like, wait, but there's fire involved in that stove, or somebody could get hurt. But I was at Marie's house and I put in way too much oil and we had the vent going, and in her house, I mean, she was allowed to cook, so I don't remember what the commotion was about. But the first batch, there's always that line about the first pancake and you throw them out or whatever, or you pick at them. But I remember I can have that feeling in my eyes of that smoke and her mom coming out to see what was going on. But I think it's because we put chocolate chips, and as chocolate chips hit the oil, right, it gets really smoky. So there's an art to letting the first layer just sort of harden before you throw the chips in. Anyway, I was fortunate.
I love these stories. I love these kinds of memories.
I can't believe, it's just like spilling out. And now I want pancakes too. So talk about the depression.
That's the thing with these food stories. That's part of why I love this food. They just thinking about food can conjure these kinds of memories,
many stories,
familiar smells and tastes, and
that's
it just brings us right back into the moment, which I think is just something really special. I think about food because it involves all the senses.
Every part of it, and also the connection to storytelling. And for the Reading with Robin audience, to me, I would pick something like this for a book club discussion. You're going to have a great book club and have everybody make different things or make some of their favorite recipes, their memories. And because stories connect us, and being part of a community and talking to people will see how much more they have in common than not. And so that's what books do. And so when you've got a book about stories with food, it's like just the perfect win. Plus depression pancakes. So chat about that one a little bit.
I love that title. And it's not about it's the Great Depression, not a little D depression, which I think would also be a really
perfect
poignant and moving piece. Although at some level it is a little D depression because in part because pancakes are such an uplifting kind of food, and they are in Miley's story too.
Oh, that's how you say her name. I never knew. Miley.
I think that's right. I mean, I'm always writing it because I'm always emailing her, and so.
Oh, I love her work too. That last book of hers was amazing.
I know. Oh, I loved that book. Yeah. I know. I feel so lucky to get to do this.
Yeah, these are just amazing. And I know you started this one shortly after the last one, so far be it for me to ask what's next. But you really.
I do have something. Already. I can't believe. I mean. Good. At some level, part of me, when I sold that idea, I was thinking, what am I doing? This one hasn't even come out yet. This is not how it should be done. This is ridiculous.
Well, ideas come as they do, especially when they're speaking to you, and you're like, well, I must do this, and then you must. So, good. Well, good. I'm excited that there's more to come. But so back to our depression.
Yes.
Big D, little D.
Right, Big D. So the Great Depression. So she tells a story about her grandfather was living on his own in the Depression, and talks about his childhood in Montana, and really says a lot of amazing things about her extended family, and anecdotes about his when he met her grandmother, who she'd grown up in North Dakota. She says. She mentions, she has this story of her father, who worked in a beleaguered bank, sent her alone in the family car to the next town with a bag of cash. Men with guns would have held her father up, but he didn't think they would bother a child. Oh, wow. Just amazing. She taught herself to drive. Yeah, she has all these incredible family stories. And her grandfather, she doesn't have memories of him cooking at all. The grandmother, and this is probably the case for many families. The grandmother did all the cooking, made all the meals, cooked dinner every night. But she did write out this recipe for Pete, and this recipe for pancakes. And Miley actually is not a big cooker, but her brother is the one who's Colin Malloy.
Wow. Well, and there's the recipe. And it's funny, you say my grandmother was an amazing cook, but my grandfather did make hash browns was his thing. And they were amazing. That was like sometimes I know other families where the grandfather, like they have one thing, like the grandmother does like everything, and then it's like they're remembered for that one thing. You know, you do one thing and everybody remembers that. I mean, everybody remembers my grandmother's cooking was amazing and her baking and all of that, and we make the recipes and honor the memories through the cooking. But my grandfather's, those hash browns were just amazing. Back in the day when you could use a lot of oil and, everything was so delicious. So of the authors that shared stories, whose recipes was there anybody that was sort of like, well, this recipe is perfect for my story, but I don't want to give up the family? Because recipes are a funny thing, right? People that will share recipes and people that won't, especially when recipes are, there's so many people that have similar ones, and you bring your own essence to a recipe, but anybody sort of not want to give you the one that really went with their story, or everybody was cool with that?
No one shared anything that they didn't feel great about sharing. The only person who had, I think, now I'm trying to look through and see, but I think the only person who had some reservation about the recipe was Colin. But everyone else, and that wasn't because it was a family recipe. It just wasn't sure about sharing a recipe altogether. But it was really sort of the concept here, and eventually he obviously decided it would be okay. But yeah, no one.
Such a man of principle, that Colin. Yeah, I think that's in one way, of course, if they're sharing the story and the recipe goes, my question may not make total sense, but maybe I just wanted to bring up the point of when people won't share recipes. It's so funny, like people get so proprietary, depending, and then you come to find out, well, their friend, it could have been passed down generations, but originally came from somewhere, or something was inspiring to the cook, but they're not as unique as sometimes people think. Thinking of one in our family where somebody was so sure they came up with a certain recipe, and I'm like, I know that one. You couldn't possibly. This was just in our family. Okay. Pretty sure the ramen noodles are universal, but okay. We'll keep it there. And I'm looking at the headings, so the artwork on homecoming, healing, loss, etc. These are just are the originals? Where are the originals?
I guess the artist must still.
Does she have them framed? They're so beautiful.
She should have them framed. Yeah, I love them too.
I'm hoping that they're framed.
I actually printed and framed a couple of them from the book because I needed them to be in my life at all times.
That's what I would imagine. Like I would want these framed and just surrounding. I mean, it is beautiful.
I framed growing pains. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
So I needed it.
Just seeing a bagel with sesame seeds. It's so funny. I was in New York yesterday, so of course, you go to New York, and I'm like, I must have a bagel, and I didn't have time, and it was so sad. I really just didn't have time, and I didn't want to make a later train, so I had to quickly assess the importance of the bagel / getting home. The next train was a fair amount later, and. So then I was like, I'm going to be responsible and get on this train. But I'm in New York, and it's going to be sitting on my mind that I want this bagel. So I went to my track, and right before my track there was another bakery or whatever, but it wasn't really the one I wanted. But I was like, I'm going to be also hungry on the train. So I grabbed one, and it was the most disappointing bagel I've ever had.
Oh, no.
It might as well have been a Lender's. It was very sad. So now I'm seeing your Growing Pains bagel, and now... Yeah, the thought is like when you want something, you want to get it and not like wait, because then you may not have that opportunity, and then it can weigh on you. But
I'm like that with food, and I'm very suggestible.
It's exactly
made me want whatever I was reading about.
Yeah, did that happen? So did you make any of these recipes?
I made some of them. I haven't made all of them, but I have made some of them. And some of them, every time I read them, I'm like, I want the chocolate cake. Of course I want
Isn't
the chocolate
that great?
Cake.
Yeah.
I want it right now.
It's so proud. Well, you're having pancakes right now.
I am having pancakes.
But that doesn't mean you can't have the chocolate cake after the pancakes. I think that is...
I don't know that I really want to make it. Sometimes you just want to eat it,
I know. You just want to, I Dream of Jeannie, blink it and have it be there.
Right.
And then, I know. And procuring it. And the thing is, I think that's the thing about food, too, when you have it in your head how you want it, if it doesn't live up to that, it's almost like not worth it, unless it's just something you're sipping one sip at a time for that, depending on the purpose of the eating. But you see, the stories just abound, and it's reading this book, enjoy stories and comfort food from 31 celebrated authors, edited by you, Natalie Eve Garrett. People can go to natalieevegarrett.com for more information. It is beautiful. We have copies that we're giving away on Reading with Robin. It's just out, and the other thing I love about this book is that people may know some of the writers, some they may not know, but it will also be so invigorating. It's like, oh, I don't know this author. I love this short story. Now I want to go back and see what they've written. And so it's also a book lover's book, it just combines the best of everything, and it's gorgeous. And congratulations on another winner, and I'm looking forward to hearing more on the next idea.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's Eat Joy and Natalie Eve Garrett. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's installment of the Reading with Robin podcast. As always, our full-length podcasts will be available right here on robincall.com. We appreciate your support and look forward to having you over next week when we chat with our next featured guest. Have a great week and happy reading.